Well, last night I was more miserable than ever, and that beastly armoring was hurting like anything. Is that all right now?" Eustace laughed, a different laugh from any Edmund had heard him give before, and slipped the bracelet easily off his arm. "There it is," he said, "and anyone who likes it can have it as far as I'm concerned. Well, as I say, I was lying awake and wondering on what on earth would become of me. And then, but mind you, it may have all been a dream. I don't know." "Go on," said Edmund, with considerable patience. "Well, anyway, I looked up and saw the very last thing I expected, a huge lion coming slowly towards me. And one queer thing was that there was no moon last night, but there was moonlight where the lion was. So it came nearer and nearer, and I was terribly afraid of it. You may think that, being a dragon, I could have knocked any lion out easily enough, but it wasn't that kind of fear. I wasn't afraid of it eating me. I was just afraid of it, if you can understand. Well, it came close up to me and looked straight into my eyes, and I shut my eyes tight. But there wasn't any good being because wasn't any good because it told me to follow it." "You mean it spoke?" "I don't know. Now that you mention it, I don't think it did, but it told me all the same. And I knew I'd have to do what it told me, so I got up and followed it. And it led me a long way into the mountains, and there was always this moonlight over and around the lion wherever we went. So at last we came to the top of the mountain I'd never seen before, and on top of this mountain there was a garden, trees and fruit and everything. In the middle of it there was a well. I knew it was a well because you could see the water bubbling up from the bottom of it, but it was a lot bigger than most wells, like a very big round bath with marble steps going down into it. The water was as clear as anything, and I thought if I could get in there and bathe it would ease the pain in my leg. But the lion told me I must undress first. Mind you, I don't know if he said any words out loud or not. I was just going to say that I couldn't undress because I hadn't had any clothes on, when I suddenly thought the dragons are snaky sort of things, and snakes can cast their skins. Oh, of course, I thought, that's what the lion means. So I started scratching myself, and my scales began coming off all over the place. And then I scratched a little deeper, and instead of just scales coming off here and there, my whole skin started peeling off beautifully, like it does after an illness, or as if I was a banana. In a minute or two, I just stepped out of it. I could see it lying there beside me, looking rather nasty. It was a most lovely feeling. So I started to go down into the well for my bath. But just as I was about to put my feet into the water, I looked down and saw that they were all hard and rough and wrinkled and scaly, just as it had been before. "Oh, that's all right," I said. "It only means I had another smaller suit on underneath the first one, and I'll have to get out of it too." So I scratched and tore again, and this underskin peeled off beautifully, and out I stepped and left it lying beside the other one, and I went down to the well for my bath. Well, exactly the same thing happened again, and I thought to myself, "Oh dear, however many skins I have got to take off," for I was longing to bathe my leg. So I scratched away for a third time, and got off my third skin, and just like the two others, I stepped out of it. But as soon as I looked at myself in the water, I knew it had been no good. Then the lion said, but I don't know if it spoke, "You will have to let me undress you." I was afraid of his claws, I can tell you, but I was pretty nearly desperate now, so I just lay flat down on my back and let him do it. The very first tear he made was so deep I thought it had gone right into my heart, and when he began pulling the skin off it hurt worse than anything I'd ever felt. The only thing that made me able to bear it was just the pleasure of feeling the stuff peel off. You know, if you've ever picked the scab of a sore place. It hurt like a billy. Oh, but it was such fun to see it coming away. "I know exactly what you mean," said Edmund. Well, he peeled the beastly stuff right off, just as I thought I'd done myself the other 3 times. Only they hadn't hurt, and there it was lying on the grass, only ever so much thicker and darker and more knobbly looking than the others had been. And there I was, as smooth and soft as a peeled switch, and smaller than I had been. Then he caught a hold of me. I don't like that much, for I was very tender underneath, now that I had no skin on, and threw me into the water. It smarted like anything, but only for a moment, After that it became perfectly delicious, and as soon as I started swimming and splashing, I found that all the pain had gone from my arm. And then I saw why. I turned into a boy again. You'd think me simply phony if I told you how I felt about my own arms. I know they've no muscle and are pretty moldy compared with Caspian's, but I was so glad to see them. After a bit the lion took me out and dressed me. Dressed you? With his paws? Well, I don't exactly remember that bit. But he did somehow or other, in new clothes, the same I've got on now, as a matter of fact. And then suddenly I was back here, which is what makes me think it must have been a dream. No, it wasn't a dream, said Edmund. Why not? Well, there are the clothes for one thing, and you have been, well, undragoned for another. What do you think it was, then? Asked Eustace. I think you've seen Aslan, said Edmund. Aslan, said Eustace. I've heard that name mentioned several times since we joined the Dwn Trdr, and I felt, I don't know what, I hated it. But I was hating everything then. And by the way, I'd like to apologize. I'm afraid I've been pretty beastly. That's all right, said Edmund. Between ourselves, you haven't been as bad as I was on my first trip to Narnia. You were only an ass, but I was a traitor. Well, don't tell me about it then, said Eustace. But who is Aslan? Do you know him? Well, he knows me, said Edmund. He is the great lion, the son of the emperor over the sea, who saved me and saved Narnia. We've all seen him. Lucy sees him most often, and it may be Aslan's country we are sailing to. Neither said anything for a while. The last bright star had vanished, and though they could not see the sunrise because of the mountains on their right, they knew it was going on because the sky above them and the bay before them turned the color of roses. Then some bird of a parrot kind screamed in the wood behind them. They heard movements among the trees, and finally a blast on Caspian's horn. The camp was astir. Great was the rejoicing when Edmund and the restored Eustace walked into the breakfast circle round the campfire. And now, of course, everyone heard the earlier part of his story. People wondered whether the other dragon had killed the Lord Ortessian several years ago, or whether Ortessian himself had been the old dragon. The jewels with which Eustace had crammed his pockets in the caves had disappeared along with the clothes he had been wearing. But no one, least of all Eustace himself, felt any desire to go back to that valley for more treasure. In a few days now, the Dwn Trdr, remasted, repainted, and well stored, was ready to sail. Before they embarked, Caspian caused to be cut on the smooth cliff facing the bay the words, Dragon Island, discovered by Caspian X, 10th, Caspian 10, King of Narnia, etc., in the 4th year of his reign, here, as we suppose, the Lord Octavian has had his death. It would be nice, and fairly nearly true, to say that from that time forth Eustace was a different boy. To be strictly accurate, he began to be a different boy. He had relapses. There were still many days when he could be very tiresome, but most of those I shall not notice. The cure had begun. The Lord Ortessian's arm ring had a curious fate. Eustace did not want it, and offered it to Caspian, and Caspian offered it to Lucy. She did not care about having it. Well, very well, then, catch as can, said Caspian, and flung it up into the air. This was when they were all standing looking at the inscription. Up went the ring, flashing in the sunlight, and caught and hung as neatly as a well-thrown quoit on a little projection in the rock. No one could climb up to get it from below, and no one could climb down to get it from above, and there, for all I know, it is hanging still, and may hang till the world ends.